So let's go straight to my passive skill tree. I start by taking the physical damage in the beginning. I went for the armor evasion and life notes. Then I went for Master of the Arena, Bravery, and the Art of the Gladiator. Then I went for Defiance. I went all the way down here. I took God's Blood. I have Yule Socket here, which I have physical damage, melee damage, and increased attack speed. And that's what you want on your Yules. If you can, try to get with additional chance to block, if you can. I have Torso for the block chance. I have Cloak and Chain. And I have Vitality Void and Iron Reflexes. And this note here, this life and mana note here, is the only source I need in the build to sustain my mana cost. You just need this one to sustain your mana cost. If you can't sustain it when you're leveling up, just take either this one, or this both here. When you can sustain it and have enough damage, you can just drop Spirit Void and this Mana Leech note here, and you only need this one when you have high damage. It's enough for you to sustain your mana. Moving on. I went up here. Then I went up here. I have another Yule Socket here. This one with the chance to block, melee damage with one-handed weapon, melee damage, and attack speed. That's what you want. I have the whole big life wheel here. And when I level up a little bit more, I'm going to take Path of the Warrior. I went to the Marauder area. I have Warrior's Blood, this nice life and armor notes here. And I'm going to take this one when I level up even more. I have Heart of the Warrior and Born to Fight. I have Solidarity, and if you for some reason need some extra element resistance, you can take this note here to cover up your resistance if you need it. I have Juggernaut here for get me some life, good armor, and some increased life recovery from Flask, which are nice. I have Barbarism, and I went all the way up here to take Dismembering, which are a huge amount of crit chance and a good amount of crit multiplier. And if you want even more damage, you can take Strong Aim. Moving to the other side of the tree. I went all the way up here to the range area. I took Fitness, this is really nice physical damage with shields. I have Practical Implications, I can't pronounce that, I'm sorry. I have Weapon Accuracy, I think I pronounced that wrong, and I have Aspect of the Lynx. I have Barbarism, I have this really nice big sword wheel here, which is Brutal Blade and Fatal Blade, which are a good amount of crit chance. And I have Heartseeker for even more crit multiplier. And that's pretty much my normal skill tree, so let's take a look at my Ascendancy skill tree. I ascended to a Gladiator for the block chance. So the first thing I did was to went for Painforged, and after that I went for Versatile Combatant. Then you have several options. I choose to go for Gladiator's Violence and Blood in the Eye. But if you want, you can also go for Violent Retaliation, which are a good amount of damage. You can even go for Outmatch and Outlast, but remember you're just getting half the effect. You only using your main hand weapons, so you will get French charges, which are nice, but you will not get any endurance charges. But nonetheless, this is still a really good choice if you want to go for this one. So you have several options here, which all of them are good. But I went for the Blood in the Eye, for consistent damage against bleeding enemies. And that's pretty much my skill tree. If you have any questions about my skill tree, please let me know. So let's take a look at my items. I'm going to start with my weapon. I'm currently using this sword here, and you want as high physical damage and crit chance as you can get. And if you can, some good attack speed. A good alternative to a sword like this would be to get Skava, you can see it on screen right now. To have really good physical damage and a decent crit chance, but it's a little bit slow, but it's a cheap weapon. For my helmet, I'm currently using Abyssus for the absurd amount of damage it gives you, but this is a legacy one, the new one are not as powerful. But it makes you more susceptible to physical damage. If you want something a lot more safer, but you will lose a lot of damage, or to use a Rat's Nest, you can see it on screen right now, it gives you a good amount of attack speed and crit chance. If you want to be even more defensive than that, you can go for a rare helmet, which have as high armor as you can get, and good life and good resistance, or the resistance you might need. For my shield, I'm currently using this shield here for the main purpose of your hits can't be evaded. and it has some decent block chance, a little bit of life, and some armor. If you can get a sword, which have hits can't be evaded on it, you don't need a shield. You can go for a much more powerful and defensive shield. You can see some of them on the screen right now. So if you can get a weapon which have hits can't be evaded, use one of those shields you can see on the screen right now. They are very powerful and will make your build a lot more tanky. But this is a decent shield and really cheap to get and easy to find. I'm using this offensive amulet here. And you're gonna go for the defensive mods is prior 1, so life and the resistance you need. And if you can afford it, try to get either some flat physical damage, some critical strike multiplier, or critical strike chance, or maybe some attack speed. But remember, go for the defensive capability is prior 1. Same thing with amulets, life and resistance, and if you can, some damage on them. For my armor, I'm using this armor here, which could be even better. The newer armor have even higher life rolls. You can get armor with like 150 life on them instead. And when you're gonna wanna have for your armor, you want to have as high armor as possible and as high life as possible, and the resistance you might need. I'm using Maligar's Virtue, which gives you a good amount of crit chance and crit multiplier, and give you a good amount of damage. But it doesn't offer you any form of protection in form of life. If you want something more defensive than these gloves, you can go for a rare pair of gloves, which have as high armor, resistance and life as you can get. If you want the best possible gloves you can use for this build would be to use Axea's Accuracy. You can see them on screen right now. If you can get those gloves, they are the best possible gloves for this build. It will make you extremely hard to kill and very, very tanky and powerful. But they are extremely expensive and I don't have them myself. If I had them, I would use them instantly. For my belt, I just went for a defensive build. I went for a rustic stash, but you can use a leather belt if you want even more life. And try to get some armor on them and as high life as you can get, and the resistance you might need. And if you can and can afford it, increased elemental damage, or if it are a rustic stash, it actually gives you increased physical damage as well. And for my boots, yes, defensive, life, armor, resistance, and if you can, some good movement speed. For my flasks, I'm using this flask here, which have remove bleeding. Always carry a remove bleeding flask, especially when you're using Abyssus. And by the way, one warning if you're using Abyssus, be very careful against physical damage traps. They do a ton of damage to you if you're using Abyssus. So my recommendation is just to unequip Abyssus for physical traps, and when you're gonna fight the boss, in this, for example in the labyrinth, yes, then re-equip Abyssus. But be very careful against traps, physical traps. So using this flask here, and I have this flask here, which have increased recovery speed and movement speed, which are quite nice. I'm using a CS Promise, which are very cheap to get, and really powerful and give you a lot of damage. This is a legacy one, by the way. I'm using Lion's Roar, and you can actually use Taste of Hate. You can see it on screen right now, which are even more powerful than this one. But I'm using this one, and this is also a legacy one. And then you see Rumi's Concoction. Actually, when I pop this one, I actually get maxed out on my block chance. So that's pretty much my gear. If I forget to mention something, or if you have any question about my gear, feel free to ask in the comments. So let's take a look at my skill gems. Let's start with my main damage setup, which are Blade Flurry, of course. And it is supported by added fire damage, melee physical damage, increased critical strikes, weapon elemental damage, and physical lighting. If you want a more physical damage setup and not as much elemental damage setup as these are, you can use Ruthlessness and increased critical strike damage instead of elemental damage and physical to lightning. I'm using 2 auras and 1 Herald skill. I'm using Hatred and Herald of Ash, and also using a Blood Rage gem. I'm using 3 cosmic damage taken setup. The first one are cosmic damage taken level 1, together with Warlord's Mark and Tempest Shield. I'm using Tempest Shield to get better block chance, and I'm using Warlord's Mark to increase my life leech and get some endurance charges. And I'm using another cosmic damage taken level 1, together with Vortex. I'm using Vortex to slow enemies down. And my last cosmic damage taken setup are a level 4 cosmic damage taken, together with increased duration and immortal call. When I have a lot of endurance charges from Wolon's Mark and I get hit hard, Wolon's immortal call will trigger and will make me immune for a very few seconds, like 1 or maybe 2 seconds, immune to physical damage, and that is enough to save you many times. I have some block skills set up, which are Reckoning, Riposte, and they are all supported by melee physical damage, and they do a lot of damage. I also have 2 movement skills set up, which are Whirling Blades together with Leap Slam, and they are all supported by Fortify. So when I Leap Slam or Whirling Blade at true or damage an enemy, I will get Fortify, which will decrease the damage I take. It will also increase the damage of my skill grams. If you have any questions about my skill gram, please let me know. And finally, when it comes to the bandits, I helped Oak. And when it comes to the Pantheon, I'm gonna go for the physical damage reduction and all of the ones that gives physical damage reduction to protect myself. And that's pretty much my skill and my character. If you have any questions about the character, feel free to ask me in the comments. And now I'm gonna show this character in action, and I thank you all for watching.